Hi, my name's Brendan Malone, and you're listening to The Edge of Reason. This is the podcast where we try to provide insightful commentary on important issues without taking up too much of your time in the process. Today I want to talk about the issue of euthanasia, or more particularly, some comments that were made by the New Zealand Prime Minister John Key about the issue of euthanasia in the last 24 hours or so. He did a media interview, and oh boy, in this interview did he wade into the issue of euthanasia in a massive way. Why do I say that? Well, first of all, he didn't just make comment about euthanasia and give a ringing endorsement for it, but what he also did was he showed that he doesn't really understand the issue properly, and he hasn't been properly briefed on the matter, which I think is a little bit troubling, the fact that he would make such strong and forthright public comments without actually being properly briefed or without actually bothering to take the time to understand the issue properly. What do I mean by that? Well, let me give you an example of some of the quotes that come from this particular article. John Key said this: "I think there's a lot of euthanasia that effectively happens in our hospitals." So that's point number one. He's come out and he's made this sweeping generalisation, basically suggesting that there is a lot, those were his exact words, a lot of euthanasia that is effectively happening in our hospitals already. And number two, he says this: "If I had terminal cancer, I had a few weeks to live, I was in tremendous amount of pain. If they just effectively wanted to turn off the switch and legalise that by legalising euthanasia, I would want that." So in other words, what he's suggesting here is that he's actually seems to be suggesting that he believes euthanasia to be nothing more than refusing some sort of burdensome or extraordinary treatment, or perhaps this could also include, although he doesn't specifically mention this, increasing pain medication, so that people are obviously able to maintain a level of comfort as much as they can possibly in the final days and hours of their lives, even though increasing that pain medication might have the unintended secondary effect of hastening their death. Now, what's wrong with this statement? Well, first of all, these things aren't euthanasia. It is not euthanasia to say no. It is quite ethical, in fact, to refuse to have burdensome treatments or extraordinary treatments or therapies or operations or medications. And in fact, in the final stages of a lot of illnesses, this could even include food or water, which become extremely painful or burdensome for a patient to try and consume and digest. So in that situation, obviously nature is trying to take its course and taking on some sort of extraordinary or burdensome thing to prolong your life, and obviously prolong your life in agony in that process, or to just add to it. It's quite legitimate and ethical to say, hey, I think my time is up now. Please, I'm going to say no to this particular thing. And then nature takes its course and you pass on. That is not an act of euthanasia. Really important to understand that. That is not an active and direct form of killing of the patient. It's not a form of suicide, because it's nature that will take its course and which will end the life of the patient, the particular illness or ailment that they have. Nature will simply run its course. So that's not euthanasia, and that particular practice is perfectly legal in this country already, so he's quite wrong when he suggests that perhaps this might not be legal. And it's also quite ethical. It is quite legitimate. For example, let's say a cancer patient turned up to see their doctor. The doctor tells them, look, you have 2 years to live, but if we give you this new chemotherapy treatment, we can give you another 6 months or another year of life, but if you take the chemotherapy treatment, then for the next 3 years, you're going to be in and out of hospital a lot, you're going to be sick a lot, you're going to be in a lot of pain because of the chemotherapy. But if you don't take the chemotherapy, you'll have only 2 years to live, but your life, up until perhaps the final moments and the final weeks or days, you will be relatively free to be able to come and go as you please. There won't be the burden of the side effects and everything else that go along with chemotherapy. Now, in that case, a person might and would quite legitimately be within their rights to say, hey, look, I don't want to go down this path. I want my last 2 years to be years that have more meaning and purpose for me than that. I want to spend time with my family and my loved ones, putting my affairs in order. I don't want to be in and out of hospital all the time. I don't want to have to go through all this pain just for an extra 6 months or a year. So that would be a classic example of someone saying no to a burdensome treatment. That is not an act of euthanasia. That's really important. Second thing that's not an act of euthanasia is when a patient, let's say they're in the final stage of an illness and they're in pain and you need to increase their pain medication incrementally bit by bit to make sure that it becomes more effective at countering and keeping them comfortable in those final stages. Even though by doing that, you might actually be unintentionally hastening their death. In other words, it's more likely that the death is going to come quicker now. The intention quite clearly is not to kill the patient. The intention is to relieve their pain and keep them comfortable. That is the intention of the doctor by what they're doing, and their actions actually back that up as well. They don't give some huge, massive dose of morphine all in one hit designed to end the life of the patient. They incrementally increase it as the pain gets worse to try and keep the pain at a minimum. That is not an act of euthanasia, and it's perfectly legal already in this country, and people are quite ethical in doing that and requesting that. So that's really important. Mr. Key doesn't seem to understand that these things are not euthanasia. Okay, that's the first point. And second point, and I think this is where he's waded into a whole world of trouble, is when he said, I think there's a lot, and it's important, he said a lot of euthanasia that effectively happens in our hospitals. Now, I think a lot of medical professionals in this country would have woken up and read those statements this morning, and they would have been rightly very angry and annoyed by what they read. And I think they have every right to be upset by this, because what the Prime Minister is suggesting here is that medical professionals are deliberately, knowingly, willfully ending the lives of their patients. They're not caring for them. They're not providing proper palliative care. They're not providing proper pain management. They're not allowing them to say no to burdensome treatments. They are doing something quite different. They are euthanizing their patients. They are killing them. They are assisting in their suicides in some way. These things are not the same sorts of things as I said, treating pain, proper palliative care, and the likes. And I think every medical professional in this country has a right to be upset today by what the Prime Minister has said. And I think he's completely wrong to have made such, I think it's really quite an uninformed comment on this issue. And I think that if he really wants to enter into this debate in a proper way, I think this goes for anybody, any of us who want to engage in this debate, we really need to make sure that we've armed ourselves with the basic facts first, and then we use those facts, we apply our human reason, and we begin to form an informed opinion. Unfortunately, in this case, I don't think John Key has done that, and I think this could come back to bite him. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out in the next couple of days. But if medical professionals and other experts in these areas come out and begin to produce their own commentary on this issue, I don't think it is going to be at all supportive of the Prime Minister. John Key, if you are listening, hey, look, it's always a long shot, but you never know. Then I would suggest that probably the best thing to do is to go back, speak to some ethicists. There's some really good bioethicists out there, if you're not sure, who I can recommend, who will be happy to inform you about the facts of what euthanasia is and what it isn't, what's legal already in this country, what's not legal, and the distinctions that are vitally important between the different acts involved in this debate. Folks, thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you found this first edition of The Edge of Reason informative, insightful, and if you didn't agree, hopefully at least you found it challenging and stimulating in some way. See you next time.